If you're Ryan Lambert, you're a hoarder and that's your hobby. And so
he always says, I'm going to tell you something that's going to make you really uncomfortable right now.
If it was an easy bet, somebody else would have already done it.
people don't know what they want until you tell them.
There's one question to me that it comes down to.
You are listening to the Gritty Podcast, where we talk about all things gritty. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm Brian Call with co-host Brad Hunt. And today's episode is with two dear friends of mine, Brice Bishop, who is the owner and founder of Peaks Equipment, and David Brinker, who spent many years working at Sitka Gear and who now supports the work of Peaks and other similar outdoor companies. On this episode, we talk about businesses, we talk about the relationship between designing gear and testing gear, and we talk about our experience growing various outdoor companies. This is an episode that every working man can benefit from. I think you'll appreciate it. For those who are interested, we have a huge giveaway going on right now. It's the Gritty Stole Christmas giveaway. You can win everything you need for a backcountry hunt, the whole package. It's worth over $8,000. All you got to do is shop at Peaks Equipment between now and December 19th at midnight, and you'll be entered to win. Thanks, everybody. Now let's get to the show. Well, folks, welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I've got Brad Hunt here with me. We've got Brice Bishop, who is the owner-founder of Peaks Equipment.
Master of the universe.
We've got, and we've got David Brinker here, Master Jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Are you blue belt?
Yeah, I am, but
Let's
not get crazy.
Getting there.
Let's not get crazy.
So he thinks, okay, his new jiu-jitsu love and my old wrestling love, he wants to go head to head. He's like, dude, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what.
And I'm like,
you're screwed.
Yeah, right.
You're screwed.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
That's what I thought.
I thought the same thing when I was 50 pounds heavier than my dad and 25 years younger. And
I go against wrestlers all the time, man.
He couldn't pin me, but that's
Wrestlers don't know how to handle being on their
Different
back.
is that he can like choke you and stuff.
They get on their back and they're like, I don't want to be on my back, and they turn to their stomach, which is the worst thing you can do.
I put my money on Brinker. For sure.
It's on. We should make a Peaks Jiu-Jitsu match.
Just because I put Jiu-Jitsu against wrestling.
You do.
I picked Jiu-Jitsu. All he has
if you have both, I'm screwed.
We got to.
Yeah.
There has to be some middle ground where it's like, because I don't know.
Are we really going to do this?
Yes, let's do it.
I like it.
I say we throw up an expo ring. We do this, and then people coming in, buy your tickets.
Brinker versus Bishop.
Yeah.
Let's be clear.
Shirts off, boys.
I suck at jiu-jitsu. This is not a serious conversation.
Brinker, you were with Sitka for a long time.
Yeah.
For most of the audience knows that by now. That's been following the Gritty Podcast. Yeah. And we're up here in Bozeman, Montana today in the Peaks building. And you have been part of one of the most iconic, ground up, I guess, disruptive outdoor companies in modern
I'm assuming
history.
you're referring to Peaks, right?
Yeah. And that would be Sitka.
Oh, thanks.
But still, my question to you is, having, well, first of all, for people that don't know, and for even those, just a refresher real quick.
Sure.
You came on Sitka right at the get-go.
Yeah.
And just kind of paint a picture of that for us.
Yeah, so there's the two founders, Jason Harrison, who ended up leaving later and starting KUIU. Everybody knows who he is. Jonathan Hart. There was those two, and then Jonathan's brother, PK Hart, when I came on. So I was the fourth person. When I came on, they had just
What year?
It was in 2007. So, it was still in the low hundreds, thousands. So I think that year we did $300,000 in sales or something like that.
Yeah.
And I started out as an intern. I was still in college. And so I was basically just kind of a do-it-all, piss-on guy, customer service. We all were, right?
Yeah.
Everybody had to do everything. I mean, Jason and Jonathan were answering customer service calls all the time. And then I just kind of grew. I was there for 11 years, and I grew with the company. And
what a ride from the dirt to garage. Selling stuff out of the garage to like Pinnacle Outdoor.
I just applied for a pro discount on there yesterday. I literally built and launched the pro program when I was there.
Yeah,
it was weird. I drove by the billboard out here on the highway and I looked at it. I mean, it's still weird. It's really weird because those of us that were in it early, and there was, I'd say there's probably 10 or 15 people that really put our entire lives into that and not that the people there now don't. I don't know. But I know what we had to do to make that go. Mm-hmm. And it was our entire life. I mean, it was pre-kid. A lot of it was pre-kids for me. So it was like nonstop all day travel. It's just crazy how when you put that much into something and then leave it, it's weird. It's almost like an ex-wife in a way or something like that, where it's like you have so much history with it, but you got to completely you have nothing to do with it,
Hey, if you like our show and you want to support us, you can do that by shopping at Stealthy Hunter, great partner of ours. They sell rifle covers, which we use on every single hunt. They sell glassing pads. They sell supplements. They got CBD gummies, other products over there. Check it out. Make sure you use the code GRITTY. And now back to the show. I'll share my perspective. I'd been hunting for quite a while. Since I was a kid, but really got into adventure hunting and backpack hunting, needing technical gear in the early 2000s. And when I got my first, I got the one? What was the very first jacket they sold in pant?
It was a Timberline jacket and pant is what it was called, the very first one. And then there was the 90%.
The 90%, that's the one I got, which was the Mothwing mimicry pattern. Yep. Mm-hmm. And I remember being like, dude, I've always wanted a hunting company, to produce this technical clothing, but here I am wearing North Face and various REI knockoff stuff. So I could go to Prince of Wales Island or go to Kodiak and not get drenched and freeze my butt off. There wasn't really, before Sitka, you could get to a Cabela's catalog and you can get their MT50 Gore-Tex lined crappy rain gear and whatever it was. I don't even remember. And you can see Chuck Adams in the catalog, and I'd get that stuff and be like, this stuff weighs 50 pounds. It doesn't really work that well. I'm back to the rock climbing gears, the shops and stores getting their technical stuff.
The craziest thing about that moment that goes much beyond me or even beyond Sitka is if you think back to that moment, 2007, 8, like think about the world in that moment. I mean, the iPhone came out in 2008.
Jeez.
No social media.
I graduated in 2007. So,
oh my gosh, you're young.
No social media yet. But think about the hunting industry as let's just talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
What is now a multi-billion-dollar industry for certain companies, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Even if you just look at apparel, it's close to probably $1 billion industry just in technical apparel. I don't know exactly where they are, but it's got to be getting real close, if not there. And then you add on top of that, Yeti was just blossoming. Mm-hmm. Like all of these companies were just like the whole movement towards this more non-redneck kind of adventure-oriented field to table movement was really being born at the moment Sitka was born. Yes. Now, I'm sure that us at Sitka would say we spurred a lot of that.
You did,
which I'm sure we did, but it was all kind of this. It was multiple companies kind of happening at the same time, to where now there's this humongous industry, and it's not just about the industry; it's about like the content that's coming out now. Just this whole movement, maybe is what you call it, of showcasing this lifestyle that many of us were lucky and fortunate enough to grow up around and be doing before it was cool.
Yeah.
But many people weren't. And even today, we were just talking about this yesterday, like so many people are still being introduced to this. Oh my gosh, I saw your film, Brian, and I've never thought I would be interested in this or that. I want to do this.
Bear hunt, like what?
Yeah, I want elk meat. Yeah. How do I do that? Yep. So the Sitka thing is like, I will always cherish it. I was so lucky, especially if you know my background. I was kind of lost and not doing good things.
Yeah, what an opportunity.
It was such a great opportunity that happened to me, and it changed my life. Mm-hmm. But to me, the even cooler thing is that my lifestyle that I love and that I cherish and lived for my entire childhood is now valued more by society because of the movements caused by these companies. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I was on the way here this morning talking to Brad on the road, and I said, the culture around hunting, we've helped set the tone for that.
Yeah.
And
it's pretty sweet.
So much of it is sort of the story that we tell with our hunts. We do them and then we package them. We share them best we can to try to show people and to help these old dudes who can't do what we do anymore, but used to. It's like, but there's this whole culture around it, and we help shape the culture, and the culture has way more influence than all the other sort of activist things that you could go and do. Culture is such a powerful thing to be to shape.
Well, and you're seeing that starting to shift that lens of society in the way they look at hunting in general, right? Like it's finally starting to turn the tides a little bit on that, and people don't think of it as just this horrific killing.
Yeah. When you're winning the wives of the hunters and they sit down in their films, like, you're doing something right, because they could care less to watch a hunting film. You know, I mean, my wife's a perfect example.
No, I remember one time we were sitting down, I don't remember which film it was that you released. You and Lampers went and did some epic one. And normally when I'd have hunting content on, Cindy would be like, whatever. Like that. Here he goes again, right? Like, and this one particular film, something in it caught her attention and she got hooked. And at the end of it, she finally goes, I get it now.
Yeah.
I get it now.
Hillary did the same thing. It's her own husband. And she's like, Brian, until I saw him in his element, hunting with you and showcased, I had no idea. I just kind of in my mind, I envisioned he was out doing stuff, but I didn't realize, I didn't feel it the same way. And it's a blessing. Now, looking back, I've built quite an inventory of stories and adventures. What a treasure I think that can be to my kids and my grandkids and great grandkids down the road. But back to the Sitka story. I remember I started a podcast at the seat of my pants, and it got attention and people enjoyed the content. And then I tried to make movies and all that. Brinker calls me up and he's like, you need to come down here and talk to us at Sitka. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Sitka noticed me, and I went down there and we hung out and then I started working with Sitka. And I can recall like being there, just feeling like, wow, this pet company was for me and this was what, 2016. This company was such a icon for me personally, watching it grow and get to where it was at, that I was so excited to be just part of all the people there. And there was a really cool group that was all there.
That was some of the heyday there. And 2014, 15, 16.
It was really cool. Some of the productions coming out and all the different dudes that were there.
Plus, that's right when we were launching. I think we launched whitetail, like the good whitetail stuff in 2015. And waterfowl didn't really boom until 2016. So the company that was really a critical growing point for the company. But it wasn't so big to where it was annoying stuff. It was just the right size to be like awesome to be there. And it was a small enough team where you knew kind of everybody when you come in. Everybody's like high-fiving and stuff.
Legends. So I was like, hey, this is really cool. It was really neat too, because these guys that were working there were guys that were out there slaying animals on the weekends and passionate about the outdoors and all of that.
Well, how incredible for you, Brinker, to grow up through that. And then to get to where you are today, and then to help build up Peaks because of your experience there through Sitka and your knowledge that you gained and your business knowledge to obviously help grow Peaks where it is today.
That's what I want to ask about, because now you're part of Peaks and here you are like helping bring it all along. And you have two like Peaks is relatively new, starting from the ground again. I mean, you were there on the ground of Peaks, just like you were with Sitka.
Actually, the exact same moment.
It's wild.
It's
like a repeat, but the do-over, you've come with all this experience.
It is, but it's a lot more comfortable for me now, obviously, because when I met Brice, I saw what he was doing and the results, and most importantly, I really liked him as a person and his personality, so that helped a lot. But I saw it and I'm like, no one knows 100% how to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
No.
there is no formula, but there is, if you've done it before and you see something that's pretty similar in the same industry, you're like, I'm pretty sure I can pull that off again. Pretty sure.
Mhm.
Like, let's go. So it was a pretty easy decision for me. I mean, look, maybe it's like, you know, back in the day, if some pioneer went across the United States once and they went back and they're like, hey guys, I made it once, I can do it again. Like, there's all kinds of chances you might die or get, you know.
Well, I mean, just the experience, whether it's the business, the hunting, like the more you do it, the more comfortable you get and the better path and route. You know, you take somebody that's new and say, hey, lead me to the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
They're not that great at picking the best path.
No.
You know,
and I've been part of other failures too. I mean, it's not like I was just Sitka. I've been a part of quite a few other things and successes and failures. I have my own business at home that's flourishing. So I kind of thrive in the startup environment. And I know pretty clearly the point at which I should not be involved anymore.
Why do you thrive in the startup the phase of companies?
I credit my dad that passed along. I value my instincts and my gut a lot. And when you're in a startup, you have to have those things because if you're doing something that's truly innovative, you can't depend too much on anybody's opinion or any science. Because if it was an easy bet, somebody else would have already done it. So you got to have instincts. I credit my dad, but I also credit hunting because I'm really used to stepping out the door of the truck and totally believing I'm going to succeed, even though the odds are totally against me. Seriously. Like, and I like almost insanely believe I'm going to succeed every time I get out of the truck. Even if I'm having a bad day or it's been a hard hunt, I still believe around the next tree or the next mountain, I'm going to shoot the biggest bull of my life.
Yeah.
Even though 99.9% of the time, that's not true.
And without that belief, you just don't go anywhere.
I wrote on my Instagram a few months ago that, like, I think I'm not smart. Let's see, what did I say? I'm just stupid enough to think I can. You know?
Yeah.
And I think that's really why I'm like, I got all C's, dude. Like, I'm not academically like really smart or anything.
Dude, he's way too humble.
But I really did.
What's your insight, Brice?
I mean, look, I've said this I don't know how many times, but from a founder's perspective, when you find somebody like Dave that can come into your business, and it's incredible when we sit in meetings, the way that his brain can absorb the conversation and then articulate a strategy that you can execute that avoids a lot of the pitfalls that I think most startups are going to run into. It's incredible. I mean, it's phenomenal to watch him work.
Dude, when you grow up in Sitka and you get to work around the people that I got to work around,
it's like getting a PhD.
I did.
Yeah.
It's way better than a PhD.
Well, what I love about Dave, like I knew from the first time I met him in 2019, I think, when I went on the Coos deer hunt with these guys. I think that's the first time I met
dude,
you.
we got to sit on a mountain.
Yeah, we got to sit on a mountain together. And instantly, like, there's those two people that they're such visionaries. Like, they are dreamers.
Yeah.
They really, they see the 60,000 foot view.
It's annoying. Dave's such a daydreamer.
Yeah, I am.
But I think most businesses, don't really have, or at least most startup businesses, they're just trying to get through the next month, right? Like, what do we got to do to just survive the next month? And from the very beginning, Dave was always like, where are we going? Where
I wasn't always like
5
that.
years from now.
Just, and to give the credit to other people, like Jason Hairston and Jonathan Hart, and even people like Jeff Sposito, and like I tried to learn from all those people because I knew when I got hired there as an intern, I had something to prove. Because the only reason that Jason hired me is because he liked me. We went on a couple hunts together. He knew I could hunt. And so I had that, I kind of knew what he was going after, but he believed in me. He's like, I want to give you a job. I'm like, why would you give me a job? You know? Yeah, sure, I can hunt, but like I got a 1.83 in high school.
Dude, I can relate because I was that way. Like with starting gritty. Now, obviously, I'm not, but starting businesses and stuff like that, it's not as important. But I was that way. It was like, man, he's actually like giving me a chance. Again, I knew how to hunt.
I'm not going to screw this
I
up.
had no idea how to run a freaking camera. Like, no idea.
Yeah.
None.
Well, you still don't because you screwed the last podcast.
No,
Now we're
that was
redoing-
not me. Like, I have no idea what happened there.
When you're around people like I'll separate them. So Jason was just like had this unbelievable. It's almost like a little bit like what Trump has. This unbelievably ridiculous belief in himself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are you talking about? Of course we're going to succeed. I'm going to take over the world tomorrow.
Right.
Like, what do you? And
Yeah, I don't have that.
I don't
but
either.
I admire.
I remember I used to commute. I used to ride to work with Jason in the morning from Fairfield to Napa, which was like a 45-minute drive.
Mm-hmm.
And I would sit there and listen to him and be like, wow, this guy believes in himself. This guy is going to take over the world. Like, I had no doubt. I'm like, and then Jonathan is, you think I'm like creative. I'm like, I'm kind of creative, but I've worked
You're
around
pretty good.
people
Yeah.
that are like, where I learned, oh, there's a lot of value in being able to like try to envision what's ahead and like kind of being a little crazy here, not so crazy here. And like, it's kind of like an art, right?
Yeah.
And it's never perfect, but when you work around people that are willing, kind of have the balls to think ahead and like take some chances, like Jonathan's really good at that. Like, and then I could name up 20 other people that Jeff Sposito, who just sold Stone Glacier here a couple years ago. I worked with him for a long time at Sitka, and he bought
over there.
Bought Stone Glacier, grew it, sold it. Amazing business person. I learned from him because he grew up in a ranching family. I learned hard work ethic, and extremely efficient and effective work ethic. I learned that from him. And then I get to work like with people like Brice. I'm like a sponge because he's like one of the best operators I've ever worked with. Brice doesn't waste a lot of time.
Super organized.
Very organized, really smart, extremely good with numbers and like justifying and like killing some of the crazy ideas I come up with, which is really important when you have somebody like me. You got to have.
Bryce is so level-headed. Like, you come up with these ideas and he'll like, nope, hold on.
Yeah.
We need to figure out how to get to that.
And to be honest, if I
Everything
don't
in
have
between.
that person around me, I'm not as valuable.
Useful.
Yeah, because you don't want to do everything I think of.
Yeah.
Like, and I would never recommend that.
Yeah.
I usually preface everything I say with like, could be the idea.
He always says, I'm gonna tell you something that's gonna make you really uncomfortable right now.
But anyways, it's really just the education you get. That's why with my kids, they can do whatever they want, but I keep telling them, just go work for a startup after school. If you really want to learn how to do things,
for sure,
just go and go with like the mindset of like, I don't know anything and I'm willing to do anything.
Yeah.
So I've been working on this with my oldest boy because, like, I mean, he's way too smart for an 11-year-old kid. Like, he's way up there. But he always will say something. I'll tell him something. He'll be like, I know. And I'm like, don't say I know. Stop saying I know. You can say I understand or give me some other feedback. Like, don't tell me I know, because that tells me that you are not open to criticism or another avenue.
Instruction.
Like, stop saying I know.
PK Hart, who no one ever even knows his story, but he was integral to the starting of Sitka. That's Jonathan's little brother. And PK Hart is this really smart dude, introverted. But what I learned from him was how to just figure stuff out. Because when you're in a startup, you're just in a constant state of just, let's figure it out. You don't know the answers. And you don't get up and like, today at 9 a.m. I have this, and at 10 a.m. I have this. You sit down. Like Brice and I sat down this morning. We didn't know what we were going to talk about. We just sat here for a second, kind of BS'd about the crappy tag system in Idaho. And then all of a sudden we're negotiating contracts out of nowhere. And we made a decision in like 2 minutes.
Yeah, it was awesome.
One of the biggest, so it's like, I've never served, but I have to imagine it's like being in a small team in the military on the ground in like a war zone. You don't have time. You just got to know that we are going to figure this out.
Got to figure it out.
We know our end goal. We don't know what's between here and there.
Yeah.
But we're going to figure it out.
What would you say is if you had to pick two things that are, because I am part of, and I'm familiar with quite a few companies, startup type companies. I remember having Casey and Jordan Harbertson on the podcast, and they were selling supplements out of their garage, as a brand new, they only had one thing. It was Yeti and a stack of cards and a couple T-shirts,
Yeah, above the car dealership.
Yeah. Well, that was
Remember
even
those?
before. They had no car dealership at this time. This was, literally in the house.
Wow.
And, watching all of these startups over the years, some become wildly successful. Even Stone Glacier, like being relatively small and unknown, a little backpack company chugging along to blowing up and becoming a premier brand in the space. When I see that stuff, and you've been around now, some succeed, some don't. Some succeed for a while and then spiral down. What would you say are two of the leading pitfalls in why startups either don't make it or end up ultimately, devolving? All right, folks, quick interruption, quick announcement. We have movies, but to watch them, you got to go to the Gritty Films YouTube channel and subscribe there. We have a channel we have dedicated to just hunt films. Just type in Gritty Films, find us, click the subscribe button. Now let's get back to the show.
Probably mismanagement and bad ideas would be top two for me.
Mismanagement.
So like you can have a great idea.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're starting a business that's like doesn't have a lot of cash,
mm-hmm.
like running a startup's really complicated financially.
Yeah.
Like you basically have two choices. Are you going to bootstrap it or are you going to go out and get money?
Oh, trust me, I'm getting 8 alive right now because I shill product for Peaks, but they don't have any in stock.
Right. So you got to plan your cash flow. Like,
mm-hmm.
And so I've seen businesses come and go that were pretty good ideas or good ideas, but they don't have people that can actually execute it because they don't have the savvy. See, we're lucky at Peaks. Brice has a tremendous financial background
mm-hmm.
to where he knows how to navigate the incredibly, even though we're not the biggest business in the world,
right.
It's still really complicated, especially when it comes to planning cash.
A lot of companies by this stage where Peaks is, I think, has leveraged themselves to survive.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. And then you have bad ideas.
Well, and the problem is when you get over leveraged like that, right? And then say something with the economy happens and you still have this debt service that you have to
mm-hmm.
either you're obligated to pay,
right?
And then you can't pay for product or you can't pay for marketing campaigns.
It's a tough call though, Brice, because you're sitting here and you're like, well, I could have sold 50,000 SKUs of this product that everybody wants, but we only bought 20,000 because that's the most we could afford for inventory.
Mm-hmm.
And you just lost out on all these sales. And it's like, yeah, but I didn't go into debt.
Yeah.
And it's like this balance, right? And most people, in my opinion, don't have the discipline to get the hate and the feedback and the frustration with lack of stock.
This is where he soared.
That's where, yeah.
No, I'm serious. This is why he's a good operator because he's not getting distracted. He takes a lot of risks, more than we give him credit for,
Mm-hmm.
I think, if you actually look at the numbers and the percentages and stuff. But the ability to be like, this is what we're doing, this is our planned growth, and this is just what we're going to do. Right?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it, 100%. And when a brand panics a little bit, I think, and then they go get a line of credit or whatever because they're like, we have to have this cash to survive, instead of being okay that, hey, we're sold out of headlamps right now. You're not going to get any until January. That's okay. We still met our forecast. We still are allocating revenue the right way.
When does that become a mistake? Does it become a mistake?
Personally, I don't think it ever
depends
does,
on how you define
really,
mistake, in my opinion.
There are some brands that have to go raise capital, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of tech companies, things like
Mm-hmm.
that. But I think in a product-based business, it's way too risky.
Okay.
I just feel like you get yourself into a really tight spot to where you just can't meet your cash flow obligations.
Yeah.
And then you're making really bad decisions trying to compensate for that.
In the life of Peak so far, the life cycle of it, what it was the scariest moment for you?
Oh,
panic attack moment. Like
you and I have talked about this a lot. It was the very first PO, right? like when you think, oh, I've got this product and it's viable and we've kind of refined it or whatever, but we bootstrapped it, right? I did.
Yeah.
All my own money. I'd never stroke a check that large before. And
what did Cindy do?
Dude, she was amazing. I mean, she was so supportive the whole time. But that was just her personality, right? Like she saw how happy I was compared to where I came from in financial services, where everything was a problem. Every phone call was somebody yelling at you. The stress levels were through the roof, whatever. She just saw how much joy doing this project brought to me. She would have lived in a cardboard box with me. Just because
my wife is living in a cardboard box.
And so she was okay with it.
Yeah.
Well, and you guys, one of the things that I thought was cool when I met you, you downsized your life to do this.
Oh, massive.
Which is what I remember. I'll never forget
Massively.
what Will Primos told me. That's what they did. Will Primos did not buy a house until after he sold the company. They lived in a condo.
Yeah.
And
people don't know those things.
no, dude, they think they're like, they got a warehouse full of sports cars and stuff.
Yeah.
And some people do, good on them, whatever. But probably a more intelligent way is if you're really in, is to be a little smarter, and you're going to have to make some really big sacrifices to pull it off.
Yeah. And that's like another area where I think I was pretty blessed when we started this, right? Like I had been in a business before where I was pretty financially stable, had a good nest egg, did decide to downsize my life. I didn't have to take money out of this business, right? Like some people that go into business as a startup, they still need to take money home and pay bills, right?
Yeah.
First 3 years of Peaks, I never took a single penny out of it.
Right.
And so I really fortunate, really blessed. I can't overlook that aspect of all this, because it was more of a labor of love for me than it was like, how am I going to pay my bills?
Yeah.
Right. So I didn't really have to worry about that piece of it. But
Brinker, you were saying that the bad ideas often are the demise of and what do you mean by that?
Maybe bad's the wrong term, because I don't think there's truly that many bad ideas. It's just viable ideas, maybe.
Yeah, that's a better way to.
Yeah,
like
are
you're going to get a return on that investment or not?
What do you think?
Do the consumers value what you're telling me? Because I get pitched on stuff pretty frequently. Like, dude, I got this idea.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to raise $2 million to do this. And I'm like, oh, yikes.
Where do you think bad ideas, these non-viable, where do they stem from?
I think they all stem from a good place. I think all of these people want to be successful and want to build a business that's going to thrive.
What's the difference between the
experience,
a good idea flowing out versus a bad idea flowing out?
God, I don't know.
And getting pursued to the point where it's detrimental.
Because
one's a winner, one's a loser.
Experience. It's got to, in my mind, it's got to be experience.
Yeah.
You see a lot of startup, that have great product, maybe even, but just not enough business experience, and so they don't see the potential pitfalls of the idea that they've come up with,
or like the longevity of it. Like maybe let's just a generalized thing I could say is like, maybe there's this new fad that pops up. Now everybody's buying these types of things, and they're like, I'm going to start a business in these types of things.
Yeah.
And it's like, what happens 2 years down the road when that type of thing is no longer cool? Technology is the perfect example of this. Like if you want to get in the technology business, my little brother is from that space. It's really, the reason it's really risky is because it goes so fast.
Yeah. And it evolves so quickly.
Yeah. And you're like, I'm going to build a social media app and we're going to put $1 billion into it. Right. Well, first of all, like that fad of whatever that social media,
it's as simple as
it could be gone tomorrow.
It's as simple as cassette tape, DVD, or CD, and then MP3s and so on. It's like, I remember being in Japan. I was a missionary, and I bought this like CD player. Within a couple of years of being home, CDs were irrelevant.
Yeah.
And all the money and time spent on that. Blackberries. I remember having a Blackberry at office, and it was like my daughters were like, what's a Palm Pilot? The other day. And I'm like, well, here it is on YouTube. I'm like, I had one. And I thought, wow.
Oh, yeah.
And you look at the iPhone, it's like, dude, obsolete.
It's
Yeah.
like
You
were the first to come for the CDs, and I was the last to have CDs.
But I get it on the technology front. What about on like in this space where you're dealing with?
I think I can define it for you.
With like hunting gear.
I think I can define it for you. And
Okay.
this is so. There's one question to me that it comes down to, and it's simple. What problem are you solving that your customer values enough to pay you the amount of money for that? Whether it's a product or a service, right? I won't mention the thing, but like yesterday when we were talking, and there's this new service you were talking about yesterday. That we value that a lot. It was a product that got pitched to us at a show where at first I'm like,
by a dude that was so
I'm like, what is that? And now we know he truly touched a chord with consumers. That was a problem.
They wanted it
or
solved.
actually in his case, customers, right?
Yeah.
Businesses, a B2B business. That founders are like, yeah, I like that. You are solving a problem for us. It's something that actually is revenue positive for us. Great. So it's like, if you can, the businesses I've seen come and go were like, they're shiny ideas, but do they actually solve because at the end of the day, consumers are overwhelmed with marketing. Unless you're actually truly solving a problem in the hunting industry, it's actually pretty easy. You go, you get to know, and hopefully you maybe are your own consumer. Like you actually do the things, right? Because if you just try to do it through research or you're just, I don't see that being successful in this industry. But like with us, we're lucky because we go out and we struggle. And we're like, Brice is like, these trekking poles from Walmart suck.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Okay.
Trekking pole sucks, right?
Yeah.
I solve problem by building better trekking pole for Hunter because Hunter needs this, that, or the other thing. I know that those customers are going to value that problem enough to pay a little bit more, and then you buy the product. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So when a company, explain to me the situation where that goes bad.
If you,
Well, I'll
Go
tell
ahead.
you. I mean,
Sure.
I don't know if it's that exact situation, but I think sometimes you get distracted by shiny objects, right? Like you might have a good strategy or plan, but then something comes up that, catches your attention and distracts you and deviates you from what you know is going to actually work. And then those things end up oftentimes failing because they're not part of the original equation. They're outside of it a little bit. And so you all of a sudden start going down a path that leads you not to the end of your goal or your strategy.
So what safeguards do you put in place so you don't accidentally, or you don't do that?
Well, we've got, here at Peaks, right? Like we know our product roadmap all the way out through 2030 already. We know what categories we want to play in. We know what products we're going to build. We know how they fit within our system. And when something comes up that's, potentially a good idea, but it falls outside of that, then we immediately kill it.
Like DEI?
Yeah.
But even everything on our product roadmap, and it's annoying, but almost every product meeting I'm involved in, I ask the same question as the one I just posed, because the failures I saw at Sitka, which I can't remember our rate, but it might have been half launch. Like if we develop something that we actually launch it, right?
Yeah.
And the ones that I saw that were the biggest.
It seems like that ratio, by the way, is only indulgent if you have grown to a certain size.
Yeah, of course.
where
We can't do that.
like
We wouldn't survive doing that.
Yeah,
right?
but that is the other risk.
Not necessarily. That's not necessarily a good thing, though. It's like a bloated government almost.
Right.
It's like.
But it's just, you have a little bit more room to try to, innovation is hard. You fail a lot, so it takes years. But the products I've seen fail, a couple things. A, they didn't, you never truly answered that question. You kind of hobjobbed your way around
assumed.
it. Yes. Or you solved a problem for like 5 people. Where it's like niche. Somebody walked in and be like, dude, you guys don't have a polar bear suit yet? Me and my buddies go polar bear hunting. Dude, we need to make a white polar bear suit. And there's like 3 people that do it, right?
Yeah.
I've seen that happen. So,
the other side of that too, I think, is that sometimes you get so far down a road on a product development, you've spent so much money that you're like, well, we can't go back now. we've invested
Yeah,
2
there's
years in
definitely-
whatever.
There's,
so
there's definitely that.
and then people try to launch
You
it.
definitely
and
can't
It
as a
really,
startup do that.
it
It's
really
very
doesn't
tough.
serve a need and solve a problem, and but they're so far into it that they feel like they can't.
The cool thing
down.
about humans, why we're all so marketable, is we just want less problems.
Yeah, true.
We want less problems, especially doing the things we love. Take hunting.
Yeah.
Tons of problems. We want less of those things
Yeah.
so we can actually enjoy the thing. So if we can, the more problems we
Increased
solve,
success.
and
Yeah, that's key.
you start with the most important problems. Can I stay dry? Can I stay warm? Can I have water? Can I have food?
Thriving.
Yes.
Comfort.
All
And
the
that's really
essentials,
that's
right?
our business,
you need.
right?
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that's why it's basic needs.
Yeah.
You were saying earlier, and this is what came to my mind when I was thinking that question. So you guys came up with a few answers that were a little different than me when I'm like, well, why do they fail? What do they do wrong? You kind of said it in a way, but it was experience. You said experience.
Yeah, it's a big one, I think.
And I would say when it comes to gear, I think that's a big part of it. And there are not that many people who actually thoroughly test, use, and have the experience to know what the consumer really wants. I often go back to Steve Jobs' statement, people don't know what they want until you tell them. Well, that comes from experience. I can recall going out with Ryan on some hunts where we ended up spending some 150 days in the field between the whole 12-month window. And I remember being out there for weeks at a time and going, well, this gear sucks and this isn't doing what if this, and we'd sit there and talk. Well, what if we had this, what if we had that? And we were coming up with, we had problems and we were coming up with ideas. And early, before I had spent year upon year in the field, I would come up with tent designs that I thought were great in my head. And it wasn't until I got further and further along where I started to realize, like, I didn't have enough experience to be making that call.
Yeah.
I really didn't. I thought I did, but I didn't. And I think there's a lot of boardroom designs that get built.
Yeah.
And we have it with Jason, who is brilliant.
Well, I was just going to bring that up because, like, our Solitude 4 teepee is like a prime example of that, right? I knew I wanted to build a shelter line, and I started off sketching some things out, cutting out pieces of paper, folding them together, taping them, going and buying Visqueen at Home Depot and cutting it and trying to, like, duct tape it together just to get it shape. And it was a disaster, right? Like, nothing I tried worked. So then I started working with some little mom and pop type things, and nothing they were building really worked. And so finally I was like, I got to find somebody who knows what they're doing and who can actually pull this off. And that's when I stumbled into Jason. And from day one, like, I spent 2 years fumbling around doing nothing.
Yeah.
And within 3 months of hiring him, we had pretty legit prototypes with really good ideas that were outside of the box, very disruptive, but you could see, wow, this is actually going to work out.
And even with that, Jason doesn't spend, hundreds of days in the mountains.
No.
And so he would come up with something.
Yeah. And then you
give it to Ryan and I.
Yeah.
But he's got to have the people. Luckily, the people that surround us do.
Yeah.
And so
yes,
you take this incredibly creative, kind of out of industry guy, which is what we wanted.
Yeah.
Engineering minded, super creative,
yeah,
super pro too.
Yeah.
And we can take those things and run them through the gauntlet of the
real life.
Side. Yes.
Yeah.
And what comes out the other end is something that's actually innovative.
Well, and the key to that too, that field testing piece of it is so critical, because even the factory that we're partnered with to make the tents, they're one of the most premier factories in the world, and they make tents on Everest, just really high quality stuff. But there was failure points in the teepee that you guys were exposing that they were just like, no way, we built tents that go up on Everest and whatever. This is how we do every tent. And we're like, well, this is different. This stress that's put on these tents is different, and it might not be 25,000 feet in the air. And
I learned that early on in hunting too. I remember getting gear, but gaiters. And
Yeah.
and I'm like, these are great. Everybody should own these. As I'm stomping around, this like, I don't know, August hunt in the mud and shucking mud, and then I spend 1 week in New Zealand in the shale chasing tar in the ice,
Shredded.
and they're shredded within 2 days.
Yeah.
And here I am for a few years thinking, this is a great gator, because I didn't really know, because I didn't really use it as extensively as I thought I did.
Yeah.
And that was a valuable lesson over the years, because now it's like a product comes down the pipeline and I'm like, Ryan and I both, we have anxiety and a little bit of panic attack. Like, well, I get it, but I've been around long enough to see ideas that utterly fail in the right testing environment.
Yeah, and I was going to say too, like when you take the innovative person, the engineer building this stuff, and you take the guys that, and I'm blessed and fortunate to be able to spend that 100+ days in the field to test that stuff, is you take the innovation of this person and the design they create, and you take the tester. And sometimes when this person creates something, the tester right away can go, well, that's not going to work because of this, like of experience you're talking about. And then you can come and meet in the middle and find a conclusion that meets both ends. But
Yeah.
there's been, like, when I was at a couple of different companies, they'd come to market with the product and not do a ton of testing. I'm like, that's not going to work, guys. That's not going to work. And then when the product actually comes to market,
It's like, oops.
you have all these customers that are like, hey, I'm having these problems, which is what you don't want as a company.
Yeah.
You know?
So just to add on to what we were talking about earlier with the problems, the best products are when brands solve problems customers didn't even know they had.
Right.
That's what I mean when the Steve Jobs thing.
The
is
iPhone
saying,
is the best
like,
example of that.
People don't know what they want until you tell them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been doing, for years, mainstream has not embraced and really pushed the hot tent. And it's like, are you like REI, you walk in or Backcountry Supply or something, and there's not a single hot tent on the shelf.
Why do you think that is? I'm confused.
It's insane.
Well, I just don't
given,
they don't have as big a demand.
Yeah.
Why?
They have an
Because
audience that has no interest in being outside
When it's
after September 15th.
But is that actually
window-
true? Because
I think so, because
I
you
think
take your
that-
spring, summer, and into mid-fall, like that's when people are having their glorious times in the outdoors. Like they don't.
There are
have the need.
there are super niche-y segments like backcountry skiers, right? That might hike up and.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
Brinker, tell me what will draw people outside in on December 5th for 14 days in the rugged mountains. If it's not hunting, what is it?
Yeah, I mean, it would be like cross-country skiing.
You have to
stuff
want
like that.
something, and hunters want something.
Right.
Yeah.
Cross-country skiers, they want it, but they want it for like a
Half a
day.
day.
Well,
And that community has to be
Yeah.
a niche.
Yeah.
Yeah, those backcountry
I get
guys, they'll hike up, camp overnight maybe, and then
And
ski
so
down the next day,
necessity,
be done.
I think, but here's the thing. I think because of that, they've missed out on the interest people have in it for, early spring and September.
Yeah.
And so the mainstream has lost. They could have sold that story and that product.
And I think that is one of the other misnomers about hot tents. It's like your mind goes to, I could see me
It's
using
too heavy.
that. I could see me using it in like November or December, whatever. But the moment, like, dude, September is not that warm in the Rockies at night.
Yep.
It's great to have a fire
Totally.
when it's 35. Like, come on.
Yep.
Like sitting there and have a fire is the best thing ever.
Mhm.
Like the fire, we've talked about this a lot. The fire isn't just for warmth.
Oh, it's entertainment.
It's entertainment. It's distraction. It's peace. It's comfort. It's like
security, safety.
if you're not willing to carry a couple extra pounds for that, I don't know.
Dude, I'll be honest. Like you go on some of these solo hunts and you spend 12, 14, 16 days by yourself. Like there's something about just chilling in your seat bag with the fire
if you
going.
weren't,
it's like
if you didn't have to
such
cut
a
wood and have fire, you'd go
relaxing-
crazy.
It's like a super relaxing. I mean, I absolutely enjoy it. Like it's one of my favorite
And I've
things
been
in the
some
world.
places like Kodiak Island a few times, even out in the tundra.
Mhm.
And hunters will be like, yeah, there's no wood out there. There's wood everywhere. It really, there almost is. We've gone to places in vast open plains areas, and there's scrub brush and little holes and ditches, and
You
that
might
burns
have
hot.
to pack it
Juniper.
half a mile
You might, but still, there's wood out there, and when it's -5,
Yeah,
dude. I mean, it's the difference between thriving and.
What's the highest winds you guys have used our TP in?
There's been a number of times where the winds have been absolutely insane. It was pretty wild with the damn prototype that I had with Pedro, which was one of the first teepees
Bear hunt.
I had
I
on
thought
the
that
bear
was
hunt.
awesome.
And so the prototype had flaws because it's a prototype.
Right.
And so it was at certain rounds of testing. And so not only was I using a prototype that we learned from, but we set this damn thing up on a ridge of it was ripping wind and snow and ice in spring. And I thought it was taking off. Pedro was scared. He got his gear and like rolled it all up and stuffed it in his backpack because he's afraid his air pad and his sleeping bag was just going to rip off when the tent came off. And we were literally holding the tent down for a couple hours as it was trying to lift off the ground.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the speeds were, but I've said this many times because people have this misnomer idea that teepees are not meant for, like, to my disappointment, friends like Dustin Rowe and Tanis and Dorn are up on these sheep hunts, and they're like, they're packing typically a Hilleberg.
Yeah.
They have no boot dryers. They cross a river with their boots up to their knees to go after a sheep. Their boots are soaking wet. They get to the other side. They have no way of warming it because they don't have a hot tent. This tent's heavier than our setup. And then they climb up to the mountain and they sheep hunt and stuff. And the whole thing, I'm going, I did all the same stuff with the teepee stove and boot dryers, all the same stuff. And the difference between their comfort level and mine is it's not even the same league. Safety wise, even I can warm myself up. I don't care if I get wet, my boots get soaked because they'll be dry in a matter of hours.
But what do you say from your perspective? The wind teepee thing comes up a lot, especially with the sheep hunting crowd.
Experience and understanding how to use that product in that moment.
Look, Peaks came up with guy outs all over. That's what Brian and I wanted. They came up with the cross trekker design in the peak of the teepee. We have set them up on mountainsides where we're in mountain goat country, in heavy storms and winds and lightning and all of that stuff. And I have yet, so think of all the hunts that Ryan and I have ever done, including late season mule deer on the top where the goats are. Every single hunt we have never hunted without a teepee. The teepee has been present. Look at all the films we have on every site. Look at all the places we have ever been. Have I ever not been able to use a teepee in any of these? No, never. No. So maybe above timberline, if I was climbing, K2 or something, that's not the right thing. But I'm convinced that for 99.9% of all hunting scenarios, the teepee can handle whatever you throw at it. And some of the things that we have found that is like Brad said, there are films and videos we have captured, we haven't published as much as we should. But we have taken these teepees and we know like the storm of all mother of storms is coming. Garmin InReach telling us like, whoa. And because I'm with Ryan Lambers, he will not leave this ridgetop on the edge of a face where the wind is ripping from the bottom, because that is where you need to be sitting to see where the buck is, And so here we are, like risking life and limb in a spot where we're putting up a teepee where you would say it doesn't belong. Right. You could certainly find a pocket or a holler or a hole to shelter yourself. But no, we have pretty much purposely set our teepees up in the worst spots imaginable. And in those situations, we take 20, 30 minutes to grab logs, timber, and rocks, and we stack a 2.5, 3 foot barrier around the entire teepee. And when that wind comes, it hits that and just blows over the top. I'm convinced I'll do that with a Hilleberg. I'll do it with everything. Why not? It's just that difference between you can construct a real quick little barrier around a teepee, and now guess what? Teepee's bigger, much bigger than your typical shelter. It has a fire inside. It has the stove ripping. So you have this hot, warm shelter in the nastiest of windstorms, and you're just sleeping.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Like last year, I don't know if people remember in that late October, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, like there was a nasty, nasty storm came through, and I was solo. It was like day 11, and overnight it dumped 12, 14, 16, 18 inches, whatever it was. I mean, you couldn't see, but the wind, like we've been in some nasty windstorms, and that one was way up there. And I was prototyping the Dyneema teepee. It was like, I had all the guy outs staked down. I had it as low as it would go. I'd put sticks and logs around it. I put rocks on all the stakes, but that wind, like, I mean, I don't know what it was at, but holy crap. I mean, I have a video here where I open up the teepee and you can see about 20 yards out is all because the wind is blowing the snow so hard.
We've had situations too where the snow came up above my knee overnight, and that walls of the teepee are like, it wants to rip out, you know?
I mean, that's literally like, it dumped so much snow on that teepee that just, I mean, that's trying to clean it off too.
We've had the snow like, you know, halfway up the teepee and just the peak is barely uncovered and you're like pushing it back. We've had to go outside and kind of kick it off a little bit, turn on the stove, and it melts a lot of it. But literally we've never found a condition where the teepee didn't pull us through. And no other alternative type shelter that does not include a stove is worth it.
No.
The trade-off's not worth it.
Well, I mean, even those Hilleberg tents that, they can take a lot of wind, right? Obviously, that's the way they're built. But hunker down in one of those little things and riding out
especially
a storm like that,
3 to 4 days in a row.
Right.
Places like
It's
Kodiak.
crazy.
And I said this the other day because, we were talking about sort of some new products, some new things. Space, ample space, square footage when you got cabin fever, is huge.
Changes the game.
Being able to stand up, move around a little bit more, having a little extra space, especially when you stuff it with gear and fire and wood that you need to dry out. You need a supply of dry wood if you're going to be there for a few days. And if you're Ryan Lambers, you're kind of a hoarder and that's your hobby. And so you collect way more wood than is ever going to burn.
Yeah.
There's some sort of,
prepper mentality.
Yes, totally. And so it's probably OCD, and he's got it stacked, but you bring it inside so it dries and dries and dries. The first day or two, it's a little harder to burn.
Yeah.
By day 3 or 4, that stuff is dried out and ready to rock, and you prep for day 3 or 4. On day 1, you deal with a little bit of lack of space, as you prepare, but there's no reason not to thrive now. So we can go to places where we can be right up there in the most rugged wild places and here's the thing, we used other brand stuff for years and they had failure points. They had zipper failure points. They had issues with not enough guy outs.
And I'll tell you,
very few guy outs.
Yeah.
And when we were prototyping and testing the Peaks version, I'm like, right, it's like more tie outs, more guy outs, more ropes, more string, like bolt this thing to the ground.
Nothing more miserable when you have a single door that's a zipper that fails in 0 or below 0 temperature with wind, like we've done in the brakes. We had a zipper fail. It sucked. I mean, we literally zip tied it, pulled it tight and cut holes in it to stop the wind from coming in because we only had one door.
Yeah, there's bringing needle and thread and sewing doors shut, and then you just have to shimmy under the sidewall, pull a stake out, and we dig a little hole there so it was a little easier to get under and so you're crawling out the sidewall to take a piss and crawling back under, and it was just so maddening.
I mean, one thing I would
say, that's why
you
just don't leave the teepee to take a piss.
There's true, but there is that too.
I am a much more gracious person when it comes to those with me. No, one thing I would say, like any of those
dried meal bags are good for something.
They are.
They are, exactly.
Dump that out.
Yep. One thing I would say, I guess a couple things I would say for those that are still on the fence for taking a teepee into the backcountry and places that they're unsure about taking is, one, use it at home a lot with the stove, because the stove can be the hardest thing building your fire. Like, you have to understand on those teepees. Yeah. I mean, that's why people used to take a candle and they'd put it at the very back of the stovepipe, because you got to warm up the stovepipe first and foremost to get your fire drawing. But also with the teepee itself is understanding the weather that you're going to have days out, preparation, because that can be what get you into trouble if you don't have the preparation and knowing what weather is coming in. So the Garmin InReach.
We've done quite an in-depth video on running wood stove in a teepee, an hour long almost, kind of runs on and on.
It's a good one.
There's little tips and tricks that it's an art. Running a fire in a little tin box is an art. And once you master that though, you can just thrive.
And I will say having a good fire starter. So like the last 2 years, I've been using these little like packets, not the S-bit anymore. Went past the S-bit. Been using these little packets. They're lightweight, but they will burn for 5, 6, 7 minutes. And I swear underwater. And you light that plastic deal and you throw it in the back of the stove, and it starts warming the pipe, and I just start putting sticks on it.
Yeah, I mean, it'll give you cancer, but it'll burn.
It burns. Exactly. And when you are wet and cold and frozen, like you want something that starts fast and burns for a long time, because you're unfunctional when it comes to your lens.
But I do find it interesting that so many, so much mainstream. See, this is where I'm excited about the direction Peaks is headed in terms of backpacking gear. Because there has been a lot of great products on the market in terms of backpacks, in terms of sleeping bags, pads, all this stuff. A lot of great stuff for like your average backpack hiker, not hunter though. Yeah. Hunters are different. We have a different set of needs than your typical mainstream backpacker.
Yeah.
When we have to carry more in terms of weapons, more in terms of that kind of gear, we typically are out there for longer periods in, sometimes 7 to, 14 days, 10 days. And we're in it in late season in much more like daunting conditions than are your mainstream, the fair weather backpack folks. So it requires a different set of problems. It comes with it comes with a different set of problems that need to be solved. And we were always shoehorning, some of Ryan ran an MSR Hubba tent for 20 years or something.
Yeah.
We were always grabbing what was available in the backpacking space and just using it for hunting, but it wasn't ideal. Not by any stretch.
Yeah.
And over the years, from boots to the backpacks to the camping gear, we're fortunate to have gear designed to satisfy our problems, to fix and address the hunter's problems.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Peaks, I was like, well, why hasn't somebody come up with a freaking better headlamp? I was telling you back then, I needed to be rechargeable. I needed to be able to have high beam for 8 hours. There are times where we're backpacking out in grizzly country. I don't want to see 3 feet.
Yeah.
I want to see 50 feet.
And you don't want it to die. And
I don't want a high beam. I don't want to last 1 hour,
Yeah.
I need a red lamp. Like we're hunting animals.
A bright red lamp.
Yeah. Not like some dim, like I'm going to get ate by a grizzly lamp. And so, simple things where you're like, why didn't the outdoor industry come up with this? Well, because there wasn't that
a need. Yeah.
It gets dark. They set up camp and go to bed.
Yeah.
They don't need night hikes.
Yeah.
What for?
Yeah.
Right.
And so
most guys are headed back out before it gets dark too.
But even those camping on a Pacific Crest Trail, they're setting up camp hours before darks and they're chilling for the rest of the day. And that's how I would do it.
Yeah, for
sure.
But
when you kill an elk at last light up on a mountain with David Brinker and you got to pack it out in the dark, it's like, okay.
Or you're looking for an elk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like we had to do a couple years ago in Colorado in the middle of the night.
Yep. You need a bright lamp and you need it to last. And that's why the new era kind of where we're at is kind of exciting. And just a small rant, there have been companies like Sitka and others that have been doing that very thing for a while now, especially in the apparel space,
Yeah.
Less on hard goods and gear for in your backpack and less on the sleeping pads and bags and tents and all that. So there has been innovation in the hunting space now for a while. Various companies are doing it, especially on the backpack front. That was probably one of the leading edges for innovation for hunters.
Absolutely.
You know, trying to use a Kelty to pack a deer out or an elk out was a nightmare.
I used my Osprey for years.
Done it a lot.
It was like,
It
this
sucks.
is stupid.
All that weight just
Dude, it's way
sucks down
better
the
just to
bucket.
use an old school pack frame.
Yeah.
Right. Oh yeah.
Exactly.
So there have been companies that have been doing it for a while.
Yeah.
But even in that space, Ryan and I would use things, get in touch with the manufacturers and say, guys, what do you think about this? Because this is a problem and this failed and that design. And what if you did this? And we didn't get listened to very much. And Brinker, maybe you can touch on that. You know, for us, it was like, dude, if you just do this, man, you have a real banger moving forward. And Brice gets this all the time from us. I mean,
yeah, a lot.
Why is it? And you pretty much comply though. And the other companies never did.
Brice knows when to say no, though.
He does, but it's rare, honestly.
Now, it might not be what we say, but it's a variation of like it's fixing the problem.
Yeah, I think our process. So, as
are we just small enough?
Yes, as companies grow, this connection that we have is very difficult to maintain. There are companies that have pulled it off, like maybe like Patagonia. I'd like to think like those cool climbers can sit down with Yvon Chouinard still to this day, maybe, and talk about problems they have.
Yeah.
But Sitka's too big to do that now. I mean, they still do it, I'm sure, at some level, but not what we used to do. And I think that's pretty normal. Plus, you get a lot more boardroom
Ego.
No, it's just the numbers are a lot bigger, and the incentive structure for the company owners changes a little bit.
Yeah. Do you think it's that
they're no longer as interested in necessarily? They still want to solve problems, right?
Yeah.
But they're much more interested in what makes money.
Yeah.
And so sometimes those things, there's a friction there. If you can match both those things, that's a winner, right? But oftentimes you can't.
Is it like sitting on your laurels a little bit? Like, we're going to sell whether we do this innovation or not.
Yeah.
That product's going to sell.
I think that's part of it too, but it's also there's a cost to the R&D side, right? That is pretty high. And so you got to do this whole SKU rationalization exercise of like, you know, this product really needs to be updated, but it only accounts for this much of our total sales and we only sell this many units. And is it really worth the amount of time and effort and energy it would take to fix this problem?
Yeah.
Or do we want to focus that time and energy on this other product that we're selling like crazy that also needs to be updated or fixed?
I still think we're pretty close to making decisions actually on the mountain. And the bigger you get, the further away those decisions get from the mountain.
Yeah.
See, that seems like a pitfall and like something that a company...
It is, and it's really hard to avoid.
To figure out how to avoid.
It's really hard to avoid because here's the thing. There's companies that make a lot of decisions in boardrooms that just keep growing and make a lot of money.
Hey, if you like our show and you want to support us, head over to Peaks Equipment and check out what they have. Use the code GRIDDY over there and you will save. They've got the trekking poles. They've got their sleeping bag that they just dropped. Peaks has a teepee. They have gaiters. They have a headlamp. All premium products for the outdoorsman. Head over there. Use the code GRIDDY. That's peaksequipment.com. Now let's get back to the show. I know. I saw a few products roll out, and I'm like, there ain't no way they wore that and used it before they ever launched it. No way. That all happened on a whiteboard.
And they're going to sell them because I don't know, man. Like,
well, you do get to the point where there's some, you know, brand power and brand loyalty, and brands can sometimes make a mistake, but it still works out for them just because the loyalty to that brand, and they have such a big audience and following already that it's going to work out.
And good marketing.
And maybe they shift from, you know, as an early company, you're oftentimes building a product for the pinnacle people that do it the hardest way, right?
Yeah.
But as you grow, you can't just keep doing that. You actually have to make products that hit the middle of the road guy or even the beginner guy, right?
Okay, yeah.
It's like the maybe like Mountain Hardwear, for example, right? They don't make their money on mountain climbers anymore. They make their money at Nordstrom's and like college people. Probably, I'm just guessing.
Well, you see that with sort of Yeti and the soccer mom market.
Yeah,
they're not making it for hardcore hunters and fishermen as much as they're making it for
Sitka started making. We started when we the original vision for Sitka was to make systems for sheep hunters.
Yeah.
Sheep hunters are not how Sitka pays their bills now. They pay their bills with whitetail hunters and waterfowl hunters now.
Look at
That's true.
Look at Stanley.
That's true.
I mean, the Stanley mug and thermos was built for the old man in the tractor in the 70s. You know, now it's
and you know, like
now Eva Shockey's rocking that baby. Like,
to be honest with you, I can't criticize those companies for that either, because
that's innovation.
Well, and it's just the natural progression of building a business. It's like, you know, it's capitalism. It's like, how do we make more money and grow? You can't criticize them for it. I don't want to be part. That's why I told you earlier. I know exactly the revenue number that I probably don't add value after that, because
he hasn't shared that with me yet. So
I was on our board yesterday. But it's a different incentive structure, and it's not me. I like this, like, let's go up on the mountain and solve some problems, and then let's go have fun. Let's sit in a boardroom and make decisions. I'm not
over time with Gritty. If people really looked at it closely, which people are too busy to bother, but if you know, I basically was like, who's the smallest company that can start building stuff I want? Like Grakksaw. I want this, because no one else, these big companies don't want it.
Yeah.
And I also am like that. I want to solve a problem on the mountain and then go out and use that to help me be better up there and survive longer. And that is hard to get. It's hard to get done by the big guys.
I mean, look, that's one of the beauties about the country that we live in, right?
Absolutely.
You guys can approach small brands that have this passion and desire to grow and solve problems, and guys that want to be entrepreneurs, and they're willing to take that risk. Whereas a bigger brand's like, that doesn't interest us.
From the small brand perspective, and you know, Brinker, I'm curious, from the entrepreneur lens that you've got, what are the three like entrepreneur stories or companies, brands, whatever, that are sort of the ones you have that sort of inspire you?
I've always loved Will Primos' story, just because I really like him.
Yeah.
I mean, I have some outside industry and some in.
Yeah.
I looked up to Will, as I know you did, and many of us did, my whole childhood. I wrote him a letter when I was like 15 years old saying, how do I do what you do?
Wow.
And he literally responded to my letter, and he said, go to college.
Wow.
And so I love it when people figure out ways to make money off their passion.
Yeah.
Because that's, like I said earlier, I feel so blessed to get to live in this industry where I get to do what I'm already thinking about anyway, every day. I mean, I all day I think about hunting.
Yeah.
And so I like it when people take the thing that they love the most outside their family and figure out a way to make a living on it. I'm inspired by those stories. So Will's story is really cool, and he's such a cool guy. And honestly, they kind of paved the way for a lot of us.
Oh man.
Absolutely.
Oh man. That's, mainstreamed some ideas in hunting and passion for hunting that wasn't there before.
No.
I mean,
The truth. I mean, I have every
I know.
DVD still to this day.
Same here.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, I would say Wayne Carlton and Will Primos and the Primos crew.
Yeah.
Like, that 100% got me into, like, I want to call elk.
Yeah.
And so 8 years old, I started using a diaphragm that was garbage.
No question.
And then at 10, I was able to call in my first bull elk. Like,
not only did they build products that we all wanted, but they
were the cool
they
kids.
taught us that elk calling was a thing.
Yeah.
And took it to that level where you don't even know. It's that Steve Jobs, people don't know what they want till you tell them. He told us, you want this.
You need this.
You need
Yeah.
this.
It's like Wayne
And
Carlton.
not only that,
We showed it
from the
too.
nerdy marketing perspective, they were brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were the first persons to people to blitz this industry with cool content.
Yeah,
that we couldn't wait till the next truth came out.
Mm-hmm.
We'd all get together and watch it, and we got to know all those personalities. We create with Brad,
the banter.
and I still to this day when I see people like I can't remember his last name now, but Brad, the main guy besides Will, I'm still a little starstruck from when I was a kid. I've watched that guy shoot so many bulls. In fact, I got to meet him a few years ago, and I'm like, dude, you're
a legend.
You're a legend, man.
And you all have your favorite.
Yeah.
You're like, that guy annoys me. But this dude, I love this dude.
Yeah.
Well, it's like Randy, you know, I mean, we got to sit down with Randy last night and have dinner with him and stuff like that. And I remember as a young kid, because Randy's been doing this about as old as I am for that long. And I grew up watching Randy as a little dude, you know?
Yeah.
Really?
Randy Newberg.
Be able to sit there with Randy and have a conversation. Like, it's special to me.
Here's what
you know,
especially as I get older, I value this more. Here's my answer to that without naming people. I value people that make a living being themselves.
Boom.
Like unapologetically themselves. It wasn't that cool to be a hunter, an elk caller in 1995.
Right.
When Larry D. Jones and Wayne Carlton and Will Primos, these guys were doing that. Like I remember my best friend when we were kids, we were walking from his house to another friend's house to shoot bows. He was embarrassed to walk down the street with his back quiver on. He's like, dude, this is kind of... And so those people, they're like, no, this is who I am. It's another example of this, like a mainstream example would be Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Unapologetically, like, dude, he basically stumbled into everying he has just by being himself.
Right.
Talking crap with his buddies in his house.
Doing jiu-jitsu.
Doing jiu-jitsu.
Comedy.
He's like,
Bow
you guys
hunting.
are crazy. UFC's the next thing. Boxing's not that cool anymore.
Yeah.
And people are like, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
And now it's the thing. Everything he does, it's just himself. Cameron Hayes is another example.
Yeah.
Dude, the guy is exactly what he says he is.
Yep.
I've spent time around him. It is not a facade. It is what he is.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. He's been so confident and comfortable in that. So I'm personally attracted to people. And to be honest with you, I've struggled with that throughout my life because there's been points in my life where I've got distracted from who I am. And then I always go back to, no, this is who I am. Why am I trying to be something that I'm not?
What was it that derailed you?
Oh. Okay. Do you want to do a whole serial series on this? No, it's chasing shiny objects.
Yeah.
Like, for me, it's very easy to tell who I am now. Like, I have a good radar for the things I am. Like, it's pretty simple, actually. Like, I love my family, I love hunting, and then I have a couple other hobbies that are pretty far below both those things. Like, and I love, like, being an entrepreneur and being creative. But, like, sometimes you get pulled away from those things. And, like, maybe, because I used to think me just as a hunter is kind of boring. Like, is that not exciting? Like, being a Dallas, Oregon, you know, like rural Oregonian elk hunter kid, like maybe I need to think bigger than that. Maybe there's something. But then when Sitka happened, I realized, oh, I can be who I am and like have a cool job and travel. Dude, my wife grew up, all she wanted to do was travel. It's all she ever thought about. I grew up, all I wanted to do is drink beer and hunt elk. And what did I get to do?
Your poor wife.
What did I get to do? I got to travel the world and build a generational company with awesome, amazing people and get an education. And I look back at that and go, why did I get to do that? I got to do that. There was luck involved, but it was also, I finally got to realize I'm a hunter and there's value in that. And so I guess to answer your question, I value people that can be who they are and make money. I value people, obviously, besides that. But what I'm saying, entrepreneurial-wise.
It's interesting to you.
Yeah.
It's inspirational.
Yeah, it's like, cool, dude. Like, you're an underwater basket weaver, and you figured out to have a way to have a YouTube channel. Like, maybe, even people like, there's a lot of YouTube stories you could go into, right? Even like the geeky, like my son follows World War II YouTube creators.
Yeah.
They're obsessed with World War II. They dress up.
Yeah.
They go out in like old battlefields.
Reenactments and...
But dude, I look at those, I'm like, dude, that kid probably got made fun of a lot and probably had a real rough go of it because he's weird.
Yeah.
But then he's like, you know what? I'm going to film me being me. And he's a freaking millionaire now.
I listened to this gal I like, Katie Hopkins. She, I was just sharing this little clip she did last night with with Brad. And there's sort of this, she basically went through her own version of cancel culture to an extent and just got excised from society because of something she said in 25 years ago on Facebook or something, right? Like it happens in society. But she was saying that, you know, she was mainstream. She was popular. She's like on the news, and she was like a big figure. And then boom, gone. You kind of think of her as like Megyn Kelly, and then Megyn Kelly's come back, right? And she's a better version now of than when she was before, under the Fox umbrella and so on.
Yeah,
I kind of look at that when you said derailed. You know, you're more yourself than you are now than you ever were before. Katie Hopkins made this comment like, when you lose it all, kinda, you sort of get excised from the community, or you get pushed out of opportunities or sort of the corporate umbrella that you're under. And then you're sort of forced to find alternative ways to come back, to make it, to do it on your own. Like, think of Megyn Kelly as an example of this. When she comes back, Katie Hopkins was like, I am more free than I ever was before, because now I'm not under that umbrella of conform.
Yeah.
Do this.
Mold.
Say it how I want.
Yeah.
This is not acceptable. This view isn't okay.
Yeah.
You know, and you and I, Brinker, have gone through time. You were there at some of the hardest points of me running this whole gritty game. And there were some hard things I went through as we went through it, as I went through this process. But I've grown and changed and learned, but in the course of that, I feel like when I don't feel like I was my most authentic version of myself, the most fulfilled was when I was sort of caught up or trapped in pressures and people and companies trying to force me to be a certain way and exerting these pressures. And when it all fell apart and I'm like, I'm on my own, I'm striking out, I'll do what I want and how I want, build it from the ground. I'll build partners like Brice. When Brice and I found each other, I didn't have anybody else. Like Brice,
I'm responsible for his success.
I'm like, you got a trekking pole? Because I got people who like what I have to say, but I can't get the other companies to really work with me like I would like, and I would rather use my influence. I just don't like freedom. I like to do it how I want to do it. And companies are like, no, you have to produce this much. You have to put this much on social. You have to do that. You have to say this. You have to make films like this. And I'm like, I don't want any of that. Yeah. So then you're not right for us. And so coming along and finding a company and a friend like Brice, I can say, hey, you have a vision for an outdoor company. I do too. Together, we can do this, and I can be the most authentic version of who I am, the most freed up, the most like content, because now I'm only doing what I want to do in terms of the story I tell.
And I think that honestly is actually what catapulted Peaks at the beginning, right? Like when you think about where we started and then how fast it grew at the beginning, it was really the combination of you being able to be authentic to who you were and going and doing those trips and those adventures, and us benefiting from people seeing you do it with our gear. So it was a really powerful combination.
And it also made it so I could feed a family and keep doing it, because I was shocked. I'm like, guys, we used these dragon poles in New Zealand, and wow, they performed. I was skeptical, but here they are. Yeah. We call them sissy sticks. You check them out. They are a hunting brand, not some art, like support it. And then people were like, okay, I need a dragon pole. And wow. And all of a sudden there was like, we talked about this before. Your plan was just to sell some poles. There wasn't like this whole outdoor company right at the inception.
Yeah, it was more of like a side hustle.
Yeah,
turned into,
which was fun. My podcast, and all that was just a side hustle that sort of turned into something else. I had no intention of.
You see this all the time in music, like it's like the difference between Chris Stapleton and Florida Georgia line, right? I like both of them. There's a time I love listening to pop country. I love it. Like it's just there's a moment for it.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you want to know what's more authentic and timeless, you're going to listen to Willie Nelson, Chris Stapleton, you know,
George Strait, Highwayman,
or like
Willie Nelson.
There's a whole plethora of others, but Sturgill Simpson, people like that.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
It's just it's very rare in the music industry because one of the only ways to make it is get a big record deal and have record producers and these bigwigs telling you how, like, no, here's the formula, just do the formula, shut up. Right. But every once in a while, you get these guys that are like, you know, here's the middle finger. Like, I don't know if you guys know Zach Brown's story, but Zach Brown was contacted before they got a record deal by Alan Jackson's producer. And long story short, Zach's like, kiss off. I'm not I do not want to conform to your machine.
Yeah.
And then he was and I could have this backwards. Maybe it was Alan Jackson's producer that actually got him. There was another producer that actually called him. Regardless, some producer called him.
Right.
And then a producer found him that was going to allow them to be chicken fried. Right. Which was their first, actually no, Zach, you guys are unique the way you are. And then what happened is they did it like a 3-record deal or something. They got all those out of the way, and now he owns all of his own stuff to where he can literally, I mean, if you listen to their albums, it's like very eclectic. It's like going from reggae to jazz to this. It's because he can do whatever the heck he wants. And his fans, which I'm one of them, really value that because I know I'm not getting what a record producer wants. I'm getting what Zach wants to do.
Right.
And I think that was another person I was going to bring up. He is a entrepreneur of entrepreneur. I mean, he owns like 13 or 15 businesses or something like this, and they're all connected to Southern ground in one, this Southern thing that's all just authentically him. I just love it when people do that. Jack Johnson's done the same thing. I'm just going to write songs for surf videos, bro.
Yeah.
Like, and then put him in a surf video, Endless Summer or whatever it was. And then all of a sudden, and he hasn't really had to change, dude. He records all of his music unapologetically, I think, at his house in Hawaii. Like,
I heard years ago Dave Ramsey said something on the about this when I was reading like Entrepreneur on Fire or like something he had covered, and he was saying maybe it was like Crush It with Gary Vee, but the point was they both overlap some, but the point was this: if you do what you love to do, and you really, really dive in and it's a passion for you, it's possible that you end up being the top 5% in that space.
Yeah.
That space may not pay well. That space may be really, really crowded. But if it's something you truly love, you can end up being the one in that space that actually makes a living doing it.
Well, I tell my kids that all the time. It's kind of the opposite of that, right? Like, I always tell them, do something that you're really good at and learn to love doing it. Because when you're really good at it and then you can love doing it, the money side of it always takes care of itself.
It's also not that. Yeah, it does. It goes back to Gary Vee's quote, would you rather be smiling in a Camry or crying in a Porsche?
Right.
And I had the Porsche job for a decade, and
so did I.
And I hated life, like in so many ways.
The happiest people I've ever met are Uber drivers.
Yeah, it's like
I'm serious.
Leaving that corporate gig, and then I was so much happier and have been. I feel I have to pinch myself sometimes. It's been about a decade since I did Gritty.
Yeah.
10 years almost.
It's really awesome.
And I look at it and I look back, and I can look at, like, just go to my YouTube channel and I can look at films, like on the new Gritty Films one, especially, where I'm kind of collecting all of our adventures, over the years.
Yeah.
And I look at that and I'm like, look at all the great places you've been able to go, the people you've met, the things you've seen. And I'm
in just the span of 10 years.
Yeah. I'm the most, I feel like, I'm always telling them I'm the most lucky and blessed individual out there. Like, so blessed. And one of the things that we've put our films out recently, one of the things that has been a consistent comment left by people is, hey, you know what? you guys are always humble. Like
Yeah.
we love this because you guys are just out there hunting and you're grateful for what you've got. And that's genuine. That's not fake. And Brad and I were watching some clip from other people that do what we do.
Yeah. Oh boy.
And I was like, they're not humble and they're not thankful and they're arrogant. And I'm watching and I'm going, I don't click like that.
Well, it's, it's crazy that you bring this up because I was over at my folks' house the other day and we were talking and I was like, okay, I got to go. And, I just finally got myself a new vehicle and she was like, man, this is so amazing. Where you've come and where you're at now. And I said, yeah, I'm trying to be pretty humble about it, Mom. And she said, you've received good training for that. It struck me weird at first.
Yeah.
But then I just was thinking back about like how I was raised, the religious beliefs, the atmosphere that I was always in as a kid. Like, yeah, she's right. That humility didn't come really just of my own doing. And I'm not trying to say I'm humble, but
You are, Brice.
But I think people who are humble have been trained to be humble.
Well, I think humility is utterly impossible in the absence of gratitude. Like I almost interchange gratitude with humility as the same exact thing, almost. Because if you're truly grateful and you're always seeking, like you're always great, like for all the things, it's really hard to not be humble.
Yeah.
They interlock.
Well, and I think, I don't know. I'm a religious person, so are you guys. I think the inability to acknowledge that the blessings that you have, whatever they are in life, come from a higher authority, a higher power, is when the people get into trouble, right? It's if you can always acknowledge that what you've received and the things that you've been able to do and accomplish and achieve come from a God who wants to bless you, and you can acknowledge that, it, like you said, that's where that gratitude comes in. It's just being able to acknowledge that it's not of your own doing a lot of times. It's a higher power that's allowed you to be presented opportunities or put you in that position or whatever it is.
Which I think is the definition of humility right there.
Yeah.
It's that belief and acceptance that, you're not doing this all on your own.
Yeah.
And
I think God puts you, in positions where it's, Dave came into my life. You came into my life. Brad came into my life. Like those aren't, we just had a weird thing. We just had a crazy connection last night that I'm like, there's no way that's a coincidence.
All right, folks, that's the end of today's show. As always, thanks for watching. We couldn't do this without you. And until next time, stay gritty.